Action.
Hello, I've been involved with feature films since 1946, starting at the Gainsborough Studios, but we'll get into that later.
Mhm.
I've always been interested right from a young age, and the thing I suppose that started it all off was the kids' matinee performance on Saturday morning. There's a group of us used to go from the council estate. Going back to that, we lived in a two-bedroom house in the Cricklewood council estate. We had lovely facilities nearby, plenty of open spaces to play. We had Hinder Football Club on the borders, and generally life was very good. But Saturday morning was our time to enjoy the film. We usually had a cartoon, Donald Duck, Mickey Mouse, Pluto, whatever. And then there used to be a feature, maybe a cowboy film or a comedy. And we always used to end up with a serial. But it was always a joy, as a youngster I can remember. And it was about threepence, about less than 2 pence of what it was, of the value now. Anyway, my interest continued for some time, and I used to go to the cinema quite a lot during my early years, like eight onwards. And I remember such films as The Four Feathers, 1940, Wizard of Oz, 1939, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, about the same period. But the one I do remember was The Count of Monte Cristo, with the original with Robert Donald, which I've been able to get DVDs of all the other films, but I've never found that available. And it's one of the films I most remember. And I remember it because I went with my sister and my next door neighbour, and it was about 2 miles walk to the Regal Cinema. That's where the children's matinees were, I think Golders Green, so it was about a 2 mile walk. We left home at 1:30, and my mother began to get worried because normally the show was about 3 hours. But we stopped to see it round twice. And apparently when we left the cinema, we got home about 8:30 in the evening. Apparently my mother had been to the cinema and they put a notice on the screen, will these youngsters please remove themselves from the cinema. But that memory stays well in my life. My interest was first developed when a neighbour of mine, a young guy who worked at the Regal Cinema, in putting the programme together, he often had to do repairs on the film, and joining two reels together you lose a few frames, and he used to give me little frames which I put in this book here, and they're frames of every film that I can think of at the moment. Crash Dive, Heaven Can Wait, Alibaba, Radio O'Grady, etc., etc. And at the front of it were all the artists: Humphrey Bogart, Dick Powell, Cab Calloway, Lena Horne, Alice Faye, Lloyd Nolan, and it goes on forever. But that raised my interest a lot. And in those days, the children used to be in short trousers much longer. Now I was a tall lad, and I could never pass for 16. But once I got into long trousers, I could pass for 16. So I got into A pictures. But before that, my mother used to give me money to go to the cinema, but I couldn't get in because A films you had to be accompanied by an adult. So I used to stand outside various cinemas and ask people to take me in, which you wouldn't do today. And most people obliged, and you didn't have to sit with them. You just found your own way, and I went to many films like that before I was 16. But at 13 years I started a paper round. During the war, I used to go out when the sirens hadn't sounded the all clear, and probably the odd bomb was dropping here and there, but it was far enough away not to worry me. But during the war we had a few incendiary bombs dropped in the park, and we had a lot of bombs dropped in the backfields, and the thought was at the time that they were trying to hit, the German bombers were trying to hit Wilson Junction. It was the main junction between north and south. At some stage, I can't remember what, I turned 14, and my father, I don't know how he arranged it, but he got me a visit to go to the projection room at the Queen's Cinema, Cricklewood. One of the films I was very interested in and left an impression on me as a youngster was called Silence of the River. Paul Robeson, and I can't remember the guy that played the White Rhino. Oh, Leslie Banks. And it showed the Nigerian warriors as real sort of heathens, with all their fineries on and so forth. And if you made the same film today, it would not be allowed, because it was showing the warriors in a poor light. And I don't know how I got hold of a copy, but it was made in 1940, and believe me, it's not very good. The cinema was most popular in the 40s and 50s, and the program used to be continuous. You could go, the entry could be whenever you wanted to. You could see the film on 2 or 3 times, whatever you wanted. Smoking was allowed in the cinema. The fog in the cinema during a fog in London was awful. You could barely see the screen. So in some ways, non-smoking was a good idea. The main cinemas in my area were ABC, the Odeon circuit and the Goldman circuit, and we had the Classic circuit, which changed their programme twice a week and Sundays. But the average cinema ran their programme for 6 days a week and old films on Sunday. Then I can count 11 cinemas within a radius of about 1,000, not 1,000, of about a mile from my house. Admission then was, front doors was 6pence. The front circle, 2 and 9pence, and back circle, 3 and 6pence. So different from today's films with separate programmes. I don't feel now you get a full evening entertainment. And we used to get two films, A and B. B always not so good, and unusual, and a break during the programme for the sale of ice creams. At the young age of 13, or nearer 14, my father got arranged for a visit for me, plus himself, to go for a visit to the projection box at the Queen's Cinema, Cricklewood, which I found very exciting. I loved the projection box. I could see the shows when I wanted to. And it was, on part-time I was working about 3 nights a week and 1 day on the weekend for 15 shillings a week. And it was the time of the blackout. There were no street lights. Every house was blacked out from dusk onwards. There were no street signs, so how people knew where they were, I've no idea. And all the the few cars that were around had dip of a fused headlights. They were shone on the paper and they didn't show beyond. And so I don't know how I managed. I used to cycle to the cinema, but I loved it. You know, it was a new. And I remember the film they were playing, and it was bellowing out from the speakers all the Argentinian rumba type music. It really left an impression on me. It was called Down Argentina Way. I think a 1940 Don Amici Alice Fabian film. And I just enjoyed the evening. And I thought, well, yes, I love it. You know, I might sort of like to go full time eventually. I was fascinated with the whole business of being in a projection box. Later, I left school at 15 and took up full employment as a projectionist at the Queen's Cinema, Cricklewood. I was paid 2 guineas a week, and following that, the Queen's Cinema started a children's matinee, and I was asked if I would be an usher on Saturday mornings for an extra 5 shillings a week. Well, I really enjoyed that because I enjoyed being with the kids. They were so noisy and so cheeky, but it was an experience. And I stayed there until I was about 16, and that's another story. My father, a local policeman, always spoke about the future, and he considered being a projectionist was a dead-end job. And he always expressed a wish that I would discontinue and look for something else. And events proved he was so right, as I will tell you. In 1944, I found myself working in Water Street at Pathy House as an assistant cutter come dog's body for Pathy Newsreel. My job was assisting in the cutting rooms, which was a matter of just winding up cuts and so forth, and doing rounds. I had to, every Thursday and Monday I used to take 5 newsreels to the Ministry of Information up in Russell Square. 5 cans. I used to sit through 5 newsreels every Monday and Thursday morning. Very interesting, but overall the job was pretty boring. And I started looking for something else, but nothing materialised. But as luck would have it, while at Pathy, Mr. Cook, who was the ACT representative, union representative, it was called the Association of Cinematograph Technicians, later called Association of Cinematograph and Television Technicians. And I became a member in June 1945. 6 a week, which is a lot to me, only 30 shillings a week. But somehow he persuaded me, and I joined quite naively. I didn't know anything about unions and what they stood for and the control they had with employment. At the time, it was quite difficult to get into the ACT. You either had a relative in a job which could be a push for you, or you had to find a job, which was very difficult. And it was the old 22 catch question, that if you had a job you could apply for the ACT membership, and if you had ACT, but you had to have a job before you get ACT membership. So it was very difficult. And though it was quite an easy move for me, for a lot of people it was very difficult, and they had to wait a long time to get their ticket. But it was my first real stroke of luck that I got an ACT ticket when I did. The Pathy job had brighter moments. For instance, on VE Day, I was on the pavilion of one of the Piccadilly cinemas, filming people celebrating the end of the war, and it was a sight that you don't forget. And my job was to assist the cameraman and run the film to the expose back to the lab for processing. Not very interesting, but for me it was a highlight. And the following, later there followed, with the German surrender, the films of the concentration camps. And I must have been one of the first people to see it in this country. It was horrific. It was skeleton-like people, gas chambers, a lot. And I remember going to the cinema and seeing these newsreel, and the audience were absolutely in silence. It was quite horrific. I well remember the day. Yeah. In December 1945, I was made redundant, and this is where my luck changed again, because as a union member, I was entitled to enrol as unemployed on the union list. Within 3 weeks, I received a telegram from Gainsborough Films, operating from Shepherd's Bush Studios, Lime Grove, and I was interviewed by the head of the sound department, Mr. Brian Stewart. I was offered the job at £3 a week. I was surprised. The big money in 1946. How could I refuse? And so I started work at Gainsborough Films on a production called Caravan, which Stuart Granger, I can't remember who the lead, Anne Crawford. This continued to the Life of Paganini, again with Stuart Granger. And the third film, before being called up, was The Root of All Evil, with Phyllis Calvert and a Gainsborough cast. There were several other assistants working, well-known assistants working at, well-known now, Jerry Anderson, the Muppet Man, Don Sharp, who got an Oscar for Aliens, Archie Dudsky became a sound editor, and Chris Lancaster was the sound editor on the Carry On series. But I was the first to be called up in January 1947.
Going back to Stuart Granger, Vernon, did you encounter Stuart Granger at all?
No.
No.
I never had anything to do with that.
No.
I was purely an assistant, looking after the effects.
So people like Jerry Anderson, you probably wouldn't have again, that they're in the background and you're elsewhere.
No, I can't ever remember going on a stage. You just didn't do it. I don't know why. But it was a good period. There were good chaps there. Bob Wilson and Alf Wilson ended up. I worked with Bob Wilson again at Merton Park Studios sometime in '53. He was a lazy son, but good for me.
Yeah.
He used to go home at night, and I used to carry on doing his work.
Ah, right.
So I got the experience, but we don't.
Yeah.
We both did it. That was a Terence Young film.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it was Dennis. Oh, God, an old actor, but he was sentenced to death for murder, and it was about what happened to the family.
Ah, right.
Not very nice subject.
No.
But I had about 18 months at Merton Park.
Yeah.
It was during a bad time. Do you want me to say that?
Yeah, please do, yeah.
During a bad period, I worked at Merton Park as a documentary, feature sound editor. I was living in Edgware, and I had to travel the full length of the Northern Line from Edgware to Morden.
Right. So that took a while, I take it.
To do the job, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was there for 14, 18 months, I can't remember. From there I got off. From there I got offered a film for £12 a week on Melba. Do you want me to do that?
Yeah. Go to
I was Sam Spiegel picture.
Mm.
Oh, I tell you what, on that film, Lewis Marston was the director,
Oh, right, yeah.
and he and Sam had a big row one evening in the theatre, and I remember Millie saying, "You know, David Selznick tells me what to do when I'm shooting a picture," because he was responsible for the All Quiet on the Western Front, the original.
Mm.
I was conscripted for national service in January 1947.
Mm.
To start with, I did 12 weeks training.
Mm.
More than that, 20 weeks. I had 8 weeks with the RAF and 12 weeks with the RAF regiment. We were stationed in the middle of the Yorkshire Moors, and 1947 was a cold winter.
Mm.
And the conditions of the camp were so bad, it closed. But then we got shifted to Skipton on Swale. But these are old Canadian aerodromes with the independent of the main cookhouse. When we were there, we had to use the main cookhouse, which was always a mile away. And when when the whole camp was transferred to Skipton on Swale, the same situations arose as were at Wimbledon in Yorkshire, just outside York. And it was the winter. Was the cold winter. Wimbledon was closed for 10 days, and we went on 10-day leave. And we returned to Skipton on Swale, thinking it was going to be better, but it was just as bad. In fact, it was a bad winter all round, because we ended up doing guard duties on our stocks of coal, because local people were coming in and nicking it. But I was the only one that got up to walk this distance for breakfast every day. The rest waited for the naffy van to come round. And that was no good for anybody really. The first group of recruits were going to be shipped to Palestine. It was the end of the English era there, and the terrorists were becoming more effective out there and killing British soldiers. And that was 58 Rifle Squadron was there, and I was a member of the 66 Rifle Squadron. Anyway, we got kitted out. 58 Rifle Squadron was withdrawing, and we were due to go to take over from them. And I think 24 hours passed, and it was all cancelled. We never did go to Palestine, as it was called then. We found ourselves being shipped to Aden on the Red Sea, supposedly to take care of the Jewish-Arab situation. But fortunately we had no events. We had no guns anyway. We used to do this riot drill with batons. And I can recall one incident where myself and a guy called Hugh Manuel, my mate, we were sent to guard a water tower. Now we had no rifle, no guns, all we had was like a truncheon knife. So it was laughable really, but we used to do a week's guard duty in Crater, which is right in the centre of a crater. It was the capital of Aden at the time, and it used to be so hot there, and we used to spend a week there. Everybody got prickly heat, but one night the guys were sleeping outside. We had some guns stolen, rifles, and there was a big stink, and things improved after that. Anyway, I was due to be demobbed in January 1949, but the Foreign Office, or whatever it is, military, put another three months on my time in the services. So overall I spent 3 years and two months. So I eventually came out about May 1949. On Pandora, the command performance came up. Could we get it ready for the command performance for the Queen? So we hired a big crew, Annie Coates, one editor, and when Ryder came on as a sound editor, we had 4 editors on the picture. We worked long hours, and the director, an old MGM guy, what's his name? Can't remember. He used to take us out to eat every night. There's a hotel in the grounds of the studio, and we used to work till 2 o'clock in the morning. We eventually got the film ready, having worked these long hours. We were well paid, I have to say. But unfortunately, the film was not selected. It was called the Mud Dwarf was the selection. They thought it was more of an appropriate film. And Harry left the picture, and Win Ryder took over, and I worked with Win. And I worked with Win on the next film as well. But I was quite a long time on Vernon that one. But it was my first time of working at Shepperton Studios, and I thought Shepperton was a lovely studio. And during the course of my time there, it came a bit later, they made Oliver. And I recall on the lot was this wonderful I can't think of the word. Well, wonderful set of London.
On the back lot sort of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we go back. Now where do we go from here?
Do you have a favourite studio, Vernon, in Shepperton or Pinewood, or are they all different and good for
All
different
different,
reasons? Yeah.
I worked 2 weeks at Islington, which was mainly doing foreign versions.
Yeah.
Shepherd's Bush, Den Labs, Olympic Labs, the cutting rooms, working for Arthur Rank, foreign versions, adapt foreign versions into English.
Yeah.
Forward. Pinewood I've worked at least half a dozen times. I like Pinewood, but that is so different than what it is now. It's like a prison.
Yes, it's got big fences everywhere,
Oh,
hasn't
yeah.
it? And
I mean,
yeah.
at one time, I could mention that Pinewood has changed over the years. I mean, you used to get a salute from the commission in the morning,
Right.
go through the old house entrance,
Yeah.
but now it's like trying to get into a prison.
Yeah. Yeah, they've got a new entrance now, haven't they? That sprung
well,
up
not
last-
now, a long
well,
while
well,
ago.
15, 20
Well,
years
I
ago,
could
so-
get in there without, I could just walk in.
Yeah.
But now you go through the main gate, the security,
Yeah.
and we used to have a film show every other week, I think it was. And you could just say film show, walk in, and now your name has to be on. Oh, there is no show now. The management have knocked it all down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what was the point of that? Yeah, you could just walk in now. Sad, really.
Yeah. Because I think local film groups would hire the John Barry Theatre, and you know, but now of course I think
Well, that was called Just Theatre,
I
something.
think they've stopped. Yeah, and then of course we named the John Barry Theatre after the composer.
And yeah,
of
there's
course.
even got a locked entrance to it now.
Yeah.
A gate.
Yeah.
But that used to be a toilet area
Oh, right.
on the right hand side.
Yeah.
And then it was made into a coffee area.
Yeah.
And then it was shut down altogether.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to have our Christmas do's in that toilet, or well, coffee.
It was, yeah.
But it all changed. And I don't know if you've been to Pinewood recently.
About 5 years ago now.
Well,
probably.
if on the other side of the road now, there's about another 6 studios.
They're expanding, aren't they?
It's
Quite
got
significantly.
I think it's 28 studios.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
I mean, I think what summed it up, because being a number of Bond events at Pinewood over the years, you got a tour of the garden and all that sort of thing, and now even the garden is.
How much did it used to cost you?
Oh, it used to be £100. That was back in 95, 96 sort of thing, and now of course it's.
I've been invited to 2 of those as a guest.
Yeah.
And John's been to 3 or 4, and Colin's been,
Yeah.
and also our friend.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
He's been there.
Yeah.
Oh, he gets a big queue when he goes because he got the Oscar.
Yeah. Yeah. Norman likes to.
That's the only I got.
Well, that's lovely.
They say that's worth more than the Oscar.
there's probably more you
Because it's given by the sound department.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when I went on one Pinewood tour recently, they said that many years ago there was props that were just dumped in the garden area, and one of them turned out to be a model of the Statue of Liberty used in Superman the movie with Marlon Brando, Christopher Reeve, in 1978, and of course people just took them away with them and stuff, and now of course it's a whole.
I tell you what I got, which I kept.
Yeah.
In Consuming Passions.
Mm.
Have you ever seen it?
I don't think so. No.
It's a comedy.
Mm.
Asa, his father was a comedian, and his mother was also a comedian.
Yeah.
A nice guy. I worked with him in the theatre. He'd be very good.
Mm.
I thought he was going to be a big star, but it never materialised.
Mm.
But in the film, Vanessa Redgrave plays a part of a funny woman, and she's got this tambourine she keeps going.
Mm.
So we got the tambourine to record effects. I've got the tambourine upstairs.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be worth something.
And I've got a couple of things. I think I told you from Labyrinth. I got Huggle's little pocket.
Oh, it's a pocket watch or something. Yeah.
And well, I got the globe thing.
Oh yeah, the crew present. Yeah.
The juggling thing.
Yeah.
But normally I don't worry.
Yeah.
Following Pandora, I did the film, the Gallamy Major, and then I worked with Wind Rider, and then I spent about a year at Worthing Park because the business was not very good at the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll carry on from there.
Just briefly, as you mentioned Wind Rider and Harry Miller, how did the two guys compare? Were they chalk and cheese, or were they sort of?
Wind was an old woman.
Right. Yeah.
Harry was straight to the point.
Yeah.
And I met Harry later on when he retired. I said, well, probably people will ask me why did I retire, but I had a good reason. I didn't want to get to digital.
Oh right. Yeah. Yeah.
I was 65. I thought it's a young man's job.
Yeah.
They know how to do these things. And even when Colin did a couple of films, he had to employ an assistant out of his own pocket to teach him
How to
the system.
yeah.
And John seemed to pick it up. Yeah, John did a couple of pictures.
Yes.
But the difference, Harry Wynne was a bloody gossip. And at British Herald I did a TV series called The Mafia. Never shown. The rumours was it was bought out by the Mafia because it was not very complimentary.
Uh-huh.
And they had big American stars, Joseph Cotton, I can remember. And I did all the Foleys and stuff. Wynne gave me the job. But we used to lock our cutting room in the mornings, so Wynne could not get in for his hour chat in the morning. He was an old gossip. And I remember one conversation I had with Wynne. I said, I don't know how I got round to it. I said, well, Wynne, you do all the big pictures, so I do all the small pictures on my own. I said, you get a big unit together. It always has a big unit. And he said, well, that's unfair, mate. I said, well, it's true. And everybody would agree with that. But he done bigger pictures than I've done. But he hadn't seen the world like I've seen.
Yeah.
So one thing compensates for the other. So what I can do now, I say, during the bad period, but during the non-productive period in the business, I got work at Burton Park Studios on documentaries and the odd feature.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's meant travelling 26 underground stations
Wow.
from Edgeworth and Morden every day, apart from weekends.
Yeah.
And that's
And the tubes weren't the luxurious things they are now. They were a lot more smaller, I understand, and they were a bit not as no air conditioning, and was it a nice experience for tubes back then?
Sorry?
Were the tubes a nice experience back then compared to what it is now?
I think carriages were not like they are now.
Yeah.
Well, the populations were.
Yeah.
It's a long time, 50 years ago. Or more.
In many ways, it was a bit nicer to commute to.
Oh, it was much so, yeah. Well, I mean, even I was living, when I got the job, I was living on the Canada estate. I used to have to walk to Brent Station. No, I didn't. I used to walk down to North Circular Road, get the 112 bus to Neasden to Denham, and then to Uxbridge, and then Uxbridge to the studio. And the same with Pinewood. And it took anything an hour and a half, 2 hours. But when I first got the job, I used to cycle to Denham every morning, 17 miles each way.
Yeah. Wow.
I was fit those days.
Yeah. Before we get on to other things, when I was talking to Norman about Harry Miller, he was saying that Harry could be a bit temperamental, a bit difficult.
Well, it depends on your own temperament, really.
Yeah.
I would think Norman is a bit pedantic.
Right.
I would think. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because the stories go around, he's so slow.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing I like about the Bonds, you had completion, shooting.
Yeah.
You had 8 weeks, 10 weeks to get the film ready. You were already committed to a date. We had 2 theatres booked at Pinewood for mixing. And just got on with the job. We got paid good overtime. We got good meals. So it was a real teamwork, really. Yeah. What can I say?
That sounds very nice.
I didn't find Harry difficult. Yeah. But it's a question of your own personality.
Oh, it's always how people gel, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I mean, I remember I tried to change Win Ryder's library system. Didn't want that. He said, "Listen, mate." I remember his words. He said, "Listen, mate. If you don't do as you're told, you're off."
Yeah.
And Les Hudson was the same. I was on the Men Will Be King several weeks before Les got on. I was doing the Foley's and whatever was necessary. And then Les came on. He was already down for doing the picture. And then Les' assistant had started, and he didn't know how to file Les' material. I said, "Well, this is the best." So I got doing Les' system, my system. When Les came on the film, I said, "I don't like your system, no, I've got to stick my own system." And he was no fun. Yeah. He didn't change his ways. I mean, if a person's got a better idea than me, I'll go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had a very simple system. Stuff that used to come in from the libraries. I used to get a completely new number in the book, and it was effect 1.
Yeah.
Not their 8 figures, letters.
Yeah.
So simple. And filed under whatever initial. Yeah. So I had no problems. Yeah. I think I was a good W editor.
Yeah.
And I think I have a good reputation. John Hayward always says to me, he says, "Vernon, your colleague is the best W editor I've ever worked for." He said, "You come in, you know what you want, you laid your tracks perfectly, makes it easy for us." Yeah, so. But I've had good teachers.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It shows. Having worked having worked for the Yap Rank organisation for 1 year, I was entitled to 1 year's reinstatement. So I was the first of the Gainsborough assistants to be demobbed. And during the time I was in Aden, the studios had closed for production, but Rank was still operating from Denham and Pinewood. And so, where to put me? And the union, ACT, took up my case. And it was 6 weeks before I got employment. But I was the first of the assistants to be reinstated at Denham Studios. And the remaining assistants were reinstated back at Pinewood. And my first job, my only job at Denham Studios was on a film, Terence Young film called They Were Not Divided. I worked with an editor called Vera Campbell and a first assistant called Roy Hyde, and Terence Young was directing. Well, Terence and Vera Campbell, for some reason, were removed from the film, and Ralph Kemlin took the film over, who became quite a big editor, and I was pushed alongside to work with Harry Miller. And that was a very good education. That really started me getting interested in dialogue cutting, effects selection and laying. And when my one year was of reinstatement was finished, again I was unemployed. What do I do now? I had few contacts in the business, so I tried to visualise what I could do, but I left the film industry. And so I remained patient for a few weeks, and then my luck struck again. I was offered a job as a second assistant at Shepperton Studios, working with Ralph Kemlin, Eric Boyd Perkins and Roy Hyde. And I worked on the picture side for at least six weeks. And Eric, I got to know Eric when working at Dead Labs. He used to work in the cutting rooms in Dead Labs. And he had put a word in for me. And I started at Shepperton at £8 a week, plus 50 shillings travelling allowance. And I had to travel from Edgware to Paddington to Shepperton, and a bus to the studios. It took me all of 2¼ hours each way. So eventually I bought a motorcycle. In 1952 I found myself working at Merton Park Studios, boring 26 underground stations every morning, from Edgware to Morden. And this lasted for a year or so, but it paid the rent, and that's what I was more interested in at the time, because the business was not very good at that period.
Yeah.
And I managed to basically work with people who didn't like doing effects, although we were cutting documentaries. They used to tell me to get on with the effects, didn't want to know. And the same applied with Eric, I can't remember his name, who did a couple of features, and he asked for me to work with him. And he let me do the effects. Simple films, but it was all the experience. But in early 53, I was offered a picture with Bill Luthwaite, editor. It's a Sam Spiegel picture, Louis Milestone directing. It was the life of Dame Nellie Melba, an opera singer, American opera singer. The film was not a huge success, but it was the first time that Les and I had worked with magnetic film, and all the vocals and the background music was all done on magnetic. We worked on optical, transferred to magnetic. All the actual photographic film and the magnetic had to be numbered the same, numbers cut identically. And it was just the beginning of magnetic, because we had a single little reader that we used to pull the piece of magnetic through to find out where we had the cut. There was no there was a loudspeaker attached to it, and all the joins were hand joined and hand cut. There was no machine to cut them in those days, so it was all a new experience. Again, this is where legislation is stubborn. All the latest equipment came in with the heads above. Les had a machine with the heads below, so everything was reversed. When you rewound it, you wouldn't change it. And I've done a lot of post-syncing on the synchronizer. And it's a great piece of equipment. I could run 6 channels through as a loudspeaker. I used to have my own sound set up in the room. first film I experienced, and Les Hodgson, it sounded of magnetic film, was on Melbourne.
Mhm.
A Sam Spiegel picture, directed by Louis Milestone. And we cut an optical and then cut the magnetic. But the magnetic we had to run through a little roller. There were no synchronizers that were fitted where we could use that. Eventually synchronizers came in with fitted heads to run magnetic. And all joins were hand cut.
Mhm.
And if they made a click as they went through, we used to scrape a bit of the magnetic off to ease the joint.
Mm.
Yeah, make a little pyramid.
Yeah.
The film was not a success, but I do remember on the film we were shooting at the gate. No, we were shooting at Wembley Studios, and we were Les and I were working in the cutting rooms there. And I remember we had the rushes one evening, and Louis Milestone and Hans Spiegel came in, really at each other's throats, and it was a ballet sequence they filmed at Wembley Studios.
Mm.
But yeah. Oh, and another story about that is they wanted Sam and Louis wanted to work the weekend. I worked the Saturday, and Bill Lithgow couldn't manage it. Les Hodgson said he couldn't manage it.
Mm.
So who was the muggins? Me. Having these two heavies breathing down your back all day was really more than I could stand. But I got through the day just about. I went to lunch with them, but it was not a nice experience.
Mm.
Sam could be charming and could be very difficult.
Mm.
And I remember we were showing the film up in Piccadilly one evening, and the copy wasn't ready from the labs. And my wife was with me. We went to the labs to pick up the copy. I drove into London, and I don't know what the occasion was in town, but traffic was horrendous. So what do? I give my wife 6 cans to carry it, and I carried 6 cans. And we ran down Piccadilly with these cans. And what did Sam people say when I arrived? "Why are you late, Vernon?" There was no excuses for Sam.
No.
But you survived.
Mm.
It's just a little story.
Yeah.
In 1955, I found myself working at Olympic Labs for the rank organisation, although the labs didn't belong to the rank. And we were dubbing foreign versions into English. I did that for about a year, 18 months, and I got thoroughly bored. But during that time, I saw advertised in the Kinney Weekly an editor required for Northern Nigeria.
Hmm.
And I thought, do I apply for it or not?
Mm.
Now I had the business wasn't very good. That's one reason I took the job of fitting dialogue, foreign versions. And but it offered a 2-year contract at a good salary. Well, I didn't say the salary at the time, but when you apply for jobs in government, they don't pay you normally top salary first time.
Mm.
So I didn't tell my wife I'd applied for the job, because I thought there would be a resistance there, which proved right. So when I got the invitation to go for an interview, I told my wife. Her reaction was I expected. "I'm not going to the Binamatat." She obviously been greatly influenced by Hollywood movies.
Mm.
I said, "It's not like that. I'm told, but people that have been out there, that Kaduna is a very nice place.
Mm.
It's up north. Muslim, mainly Muslim, and life is easy. Anyway, to cut it long story short, I went for an interview. There were 2 film people and 2 government representatives. And the first question I was asked, had I got the pioneering spirit? And my reply was, I don't know what you mean by that, but I suppose yes. And I soon realised when I got there what they meant. It was really basic. You start from scratch. Anyway, the question of salary arose. He said, what sort of salary would you expect going out there on first tour? I said, top. He said, well, we don't normally pay top salaries on first tours. I said, well, you see what I've been earning. It's that or nothing. Oh, we'll have to investigate. Well, it took a couple of months before I heard anything. And eventually I was offered a job. And then preparation to go for 18 months to a year. God, I got a friend of mine to get me a 4'6" cube crate. I didn't realise how big 4'6" cube was. Tremendous. It was plugged in my front garden. Put all our pram in, everything we wanted. And we had a local pickup at the railway at that point. It was, whether it was steam, I can't remember. But I phoned them up to come and collect it. And then I got a phone call saying, you know, this is far too heavy. It's never going to get to Nigeria. He said, you can move backwards and forwards now with the nails and they give it a... Anyway, he said, we're not supposed to take anything above 200 weight. And this is 3,500 weight. Anyway, they called me down the station. I went down there and they wired it all up for me. And it was sent. And that was the last I saw of it until I got to Kaduna. And stupidly, at the time I was employed, they still had the old colonial conditions. Apparently I could have taken 99 packages. You take food out for the whole time you were there. You might be in the outlandish countryside or in a small village doing work, you know, Ministry of Works and so forth. At any rate, where did I go? Eventually, well, my wife was not too happy again. I said, look, you're going to enjoy that, you know. And I went down by ship on my own. Asked by my working colleagues, what made you want to go to Nigeria, northern Nigeria? My reply, I want to see Africa before it all changed. The words issued by, or spoken to by John Barr in Dancing with Wolves. And it really did change when I left in 1964. Nigeria, sailing to. In August 1958 I travelled to Liverpool and embarked on the ship Oriole bound for Papa, Lagos. The Oriole was one of 3 ships belonging to the Eldenta shipping line, which traded between Liverpool, Accra and Freetown in Nigeria. The voyage took 14 days. I think most of the passengers were expatriates employed in the 3 African states. I travelled alone, no family. Is that all right?
Yeah, that sounds good, yeah.
And they were, well, no family, they arrived 6 weeks later.
Ah, right.
I'll finish up. Okay. On arrival at Papa, I was met by the government coastal agent who directed me through customs and later arranged transport to the hotel for the night. Next day I was collected and taken to the rail station where I boarded the local train. It was a single line narrow gauge track. In front of me, 700 miles, a 28-hour journey to Vernon. It had stopped at one station, Minna. Fortunately, I had a sleeping compartment.
Okay.
After a 28-hour journey, a rocket journey at that, the train pulled into Kaduna station around dusk. The film crew were there waiting to greet me. I was taken to the rest house for temporary accommodation for the night, and I was later taken to the Director of Information's house where he had arranged a small welcome party for me. His compound was large, full of tropical trees lit by small candles in small tins. The garden was a buzz of croaking frogs and cicadas clicking and insects buzzing, and it was a glorious and exciting atmosphere. It was magical. I had arrived. My wife and children journeyed 6 weeks later, and I drove to meet them at Kano Airport. But that's another story.
Okay.
That's about the end of Nigeria. I'd say Nigeria continued.
Okay, and action.
The train travelled through endless miles of open territory with nothing but termite mounds, some as high as 12 feet. It was a real adventure and exciting, and I wouldn't have missed it. In 1967-68, I was approached about going out on technical aid with British Overseas Aid. The contract was for 18 months, plus leave period, as director, scriptwriter, editor for the Sierra Leone Government Film Unit, Information Film Unit, for the Government Information Film Unit, Freetown. It was always very hot and humid and tiring. And when the rains came, it was insatiable. It just tumbled down, continuous for the best part of several days. And if you weren't careful, all your clothes turned mouldy. If you didn't have air conditioning, all your clothes turned mouldy in the wardrobes.
Oh, wow.
That's true.
Yeah.
But that's another story. I preferred Nigeria.
Yeah.
Okay. In 1968, I returned to England again and resumed my job as a sound editor. The first picture I worked on was Half a Sixpence with Tommy Steele at Shepperton Studios. It was a big unit, getting the film ready, and I just did simple work on ADR footsteps.
Yep.
In 1979, South Africa, the film Circles in the Forest, location shooting in the beautiful town of Knysna and surrounding forest areas. The editor, John Grover, and the assistant, Mac Led. I flew out 6 weeks into the shooting and was in Knysna for 8 to 8 weeks. The editing room was part completed in an old large house opposite the hotel, the Knysna Hotel, we were staying. It was very convenient. The film was shot in the beautiful town of Knysna and the surrounding forests, and had a beautiful jetty. In fact, it was a beautiful place. Whilst John was chopping away, editing, I spent many hours with the sound crew recording sound effects. During our stay in Nigeria, a TV crew filmed John and I in our respective editing rooms for Good Morning Sunday, Good Morning South Africa. Repeat, for Good Morning South Africa. The final editing and dubbing was completed in Johannesburg. The local people were extremely hospitable during the shoot and prepared the town for the 1880 period. All the main road was sanded and the field of Nysa captured the period. Nysa is, I repeat, a beautiful town with surrounding forests. It's on the garden route between Cape Town and Port Elizabeth and Durban. If you're looking for an ideal holiday, this really is the place. To wind up, as a freelance I've worked alongside many top-class technicians, met many famous artists and worked in many of the famous studios. I think I've worked in 11 studios throughout Europe and Africa and Mexico City. I find editing people, or film crews in general, are terribly friendly. I've met many actors and actresses, i.e. Roger Moore, Sean Connery, Richard Harris, Donald Sutherland, Ava Gardner, Sophie Loren, etc., etc. The industry has taken me to many parts of the world, and I've worked in all the least 11 countries, to name a few: Italy, Rome, Spain, Madrid, Mexico City, America, South Africa, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and often away for weeks, sometimes months, away from the family. It's not good for domestic harmony. Even in England, post-production schedules often meant working a 12-hour day and a 7-day week. Not much glamour attached to it. To keep employed is to be flexible, to be prepared to work long hours and work anywhere. Would I do it all again? For sure I would. Working in the film industry is the best job ever. Cheers. Vernon Messenger.
Thank you, Vernon, very much for joining me. Thank you. 2, 1, and action.
In 1979, I flew out to South Africa to join John Grover and Matthew Edison.
Sorry. These are good outtakes. So this is Vernon's collection of DVDs, one of his hobbies since his retirement. You can see that his passion for film and television hasn't dwindled over the years. Plenty to keep the most avid fan busy for, well, as long as they want. So here is Vernon's magnificent DVD and Blu-ray library, one of his many hobbies since his retirement. His love for films hasn't dwindled over the years, as you can see. He has over 5,000 titles, including all eras and genres. And Vernon has a lovely home cinema system with a projector, speakers, multi-speakers, the whole lot. Very well set up.